What's up, everybody? Welcome back to this isn't even the late night live stream. This is the Moon live stream on a Wednesday.
This is the
about some DFS.
Yeah, this is the random. Sorry, I'm a little under the weather, but this is the random Wednesday afternoon live stream that we've never done before. But Thanksgiving is here. You know, good old Turkey Day. Get to watch 3 football games tomorrow, and we get to play DraftKings.
Yep. Get to eat some subpar food. You know, it's going to be a vibe.
Not a big turkey guy?
Hell no. Unless it's like at one of those festivals where it's like a big ass barbecue turkey leg, because I mean those slap. But like other than that, I'm good. I'm good on almost all Thanksgiving food. What's up, Houston? Thanksgiving's all about wine to me.
No, it's all about, you know, spending time with the fam and eating some food. You know, I don't mind Thanksgiving food. Turkey is tough, especially when you have like white parents who really don't know how to make a good turkey. So
I'm right there with you.
Like turkey's just dry, but everything else is good, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's facts. You know, what's not going to be dry is our bankroll. I don't know. I tried with that one. All right. Let's talk about this slate, man, because this is an interesting one. We've got one game that kicks off the slate that's completely ass. We have an interesting mid game and an interesting late game. 3 games on the slate. Totals this week. The clear-cut standout game is the Dallas and Raiders game in the middle window. It's got a 51 total. It's actually dropped a couple of points from 53. Also, the Bills total has sunk, and I'm a little bit interested in that. Opened up at 52. It's down to 45.5, which is just a massive drop. I'm not exactly sure the cause for that. And then the Chicago game at the very bottom also dropping. All 3 of these totals have dropped, but Chicago and Detroit is down to 42 after opening at 45. So a lot of line movement for this Thanksgiving slate.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really look at the Vegas, so that's kind of interesting to note is that huge total drop. I don't get why it would drop that many points. You know, Kamara and Mark Ingram aren't moving lines a full touchdown.
No.
So I don't know. Maybe that's an opportunity to hit the over then, because I think the Bills are in a pretty solid spot going on the road in a dome against New Orleans, who have shown that they can be beat on defense and through the air specifically. So I definitely like the Bills on the slate. But, yeah, other than that, it's going to be a pretty fun slate. And, yeah, good opportunity to bring that up. Somebody posted on Twitter, but Yahoo is running like a crazy tournament tomorrow. It's like a $1 buy-in. You don't lose your money. I think at best or at worst, you double your $1 into $2. So
yeah,
be worth it to go over there and play in that tournament for sure.
Yeah, definitely. It's a $1 buy-in, 100K field, and it's got a minus 900% rake. Pretty solid. Pretty solid as far as bankroll allocation. Get that dollar in, get weird. Just play an absolutely crazy lineup and see what happens. Worst you can do is double your money. So definitely going to be in that. But focusing back on DraftKings, we can go position by position here. And on DraftKings, like there's really just two guys. It's Josh Allen and I think it's Dak Prescott. I think it's going to be really hard for any of the other starting quarterbacks to match those two guys. Contrarian plays would probably be Andy Dalton or Derek Carr. I don't know if you have a lean between those two, but if you're playing cash games this week, it's definitely going to be either Allen or Prescott, probably Allen, by a decent margin.
Yeah, I mean, Josh Allen is clear cut the best quarterback play on the slate, in my opinion. 7,800 has the best floor ceiling combo out of all of these quarterbacks. I think Dak is fine, but obviously there's some uncertainty around his skill position players' injuries. CeeDee Lamb might miss his game. We know Amari Cooper is going to miss. Zeke looks like he's banged up a little bit. So I like the Cowboys offense, but there is some uncertainty and some risk there. So if you're playing cash games, which personally I am not, I do not play cash on short slates. I just don't think the action is good enough on these short slates. So I'm just going to focus on GPPs, and I'm going to come from a GPP perspective. I still think Josh Allen is probably going to be my highest owned quarterback in tournaments, but Dak and Derek Carr are interesting. And other than that, I don't have any faith in Trevor Siemian or Andy Dalton or Jared Goff to win somebody a GPP. So you're really just going to be playing these three quarterbacks at the top in stacks of those games and just looking to get different elsewhere because, at the end of the day, at quarterback, I mean, unless we have a Josh Allen eruption game, all of these guys are going to be pretty close in points.
Yeah. To me, it's just that, if we're looking at it from a tournament perspective, then Josh Allen's ceiling is just different from everybody else on the slate.
Yeah.
So I think that you have to look there. I know that New Orleans defense has been better or has been good for the majority of the year, but they're kind of falling off a little bit. They've allowed some good quarterback games over the past couple of weeks. So Josh Allen, I wouldn't be scared off. I also was expecting Dak Prescott's projected ownership to be lower. So it makes me like Allen a little bit more if he's not going to be just absolutely the by far and away highest owned quarterback. If a lot of people are going to play Dak and a decent amount of people are going to play Derek Carr, I think going super heavy Allen, and just being super overweight on Allen in tournaments is probably the way that I'm going to go.
Yeah, I could definitely see that being viable. And, right now, Josh Allen is projecting to be the highest owned quarterback. So you're not going to get any ownership leverage off of him. And if I had to guess, I think he'll come in 40% probably in large field stuff. In small field stuff, I could see Josh Allen getting to around 50, 55%, to be honest, just with the lack of quarterback options that we have. Like I said, there's really only three quarterbacks in play this week. And I really just truly feel like if you run Andy Dalton or Goff or Trevor Siemian, you're essentially just burning your money on this slate. There's really no need to pay down at QB, especially when we have a lot of salary relief options in terms of skill positions, due to injuries and due to some other factors. So in terms of quarterbacks, if I had to pick, I mean, for GPPs, it's probably Dak, just because he's going to come with a little bit less ownership than Josh Allen. And it's a bounce back spot for the Cowboys offense. And there's cheap stacking options that you could pair Dak with as well. So,
yeah. And we'll talk through all of the stacks as we get to the skill position players. Running back, though, is the interesting position this week because we have injuries. So we have cheap guys. We have two obvious plays in David Montgomery and DeAndre Swift, who I think are going to command a large percentage of the ownership. And then, getting away from them is the key way to get different, I think.
Yeah, I mean, David Montgomery is projecting as the highest owned running back on the slate. DeAndre Swift is projecting as the second highest owned running back on the slate. And it's just because we know that these two guys are going to see the majority of their, team's rushing share, right? There's uncertainty with the Saints guys. Obviously, I just said Zeke is a little bot banged up. The Bills have a 3-way timeshare in their backfield. So Ingram, or not Ingram, DeMont and DeAndre Swift are clear-cut the best running back plays on the slate. I'm going to have a hard time fading David Montgomery, especially. He's 6K. It's a good spot against Detroit. He's playing like every running back snap. He's barely ceding any touches to Khalil Herbert right now. Andy Dalton's in, so that takes away the threat of, Justin Fields rushing the ball and, potentially scoring rushing touchdowns, vulturing David Montgomery. So the easiest way to get leverage on the field this week is to fade David Montgomery, especially because he is in the early game, and you'll have that information moving on as the day goes out, or as the day plays out, and you can late swap your lineups accordingly to how David Montgomery does, as what I think he's going to be the highest owned player on the slate. But it's a tough fade. Like, if I'm playing 3 lineups, I'm probably playing him in all 3. It's just that simple.
Yeah, I agree. Unless you're playing a mass amount of lineups, it's probably just lock button status for DeMont. Montgomery is better with Dalton. Yeah, I agree. 100%. Like Joey said, you'd have a reduced risk of rush attempts from Justin Fields, which increases his share. And then not even that, but like if Andy Dalton isn't rushing, then it probably means that, he's dumping the ball off a little bit more, and David Montgomery can get involved in the passing game. For sure. And the passing game is why we're going to like DeAndre Swift. He's completely game script independent. He's guaranteed points. And just with the weakness of the running back position at the top, I think he is the pay up option that you want to go to. It looks like Alvin Kamara is going to miss this game. Zeke Elliott is banged up, and he's going to have a lot of ownership. So I think it's pretty hard to go with Zeke. I think Zeke is a really strong fade this week, but DeAndre Swift, he can pop off for 10 targets in any spot, especially if the Lions are trailing. Offense in general should get a boost with Goff back. Yeah, and not to mention the Bears' rush defense has progressively gotten worse as the season went on, probably due to some of the injuries they've sustained on defense.
Yeah, they've been missing Khalil Mack. I think Akeem Hicks has been hurt. And then in the secondary, Eddie Jackson has been out recently as well. So they've been banged up on D, and it's definitely an exploitable spot for the Lions offense, in my opinion, especially if Jared Goff comes back. Obviously, he's not great, but he can move the ball down the field, better than Tim Boyle can, right? So we kind of need Jared Goff in there to feel comfortable rostering some of these Lions players. And I think some of these Lions guys, especially at wide receiver and tight end, are in play, but it's going to be tough to go there either way. And DeAndre Swift, 7,300, he is probably the preferred spend up option. Kamara looks like he's going to be out, so can blank him out of the player pool. And then Zeke, like I've been saying, he's banged up a little bit. He's the most expensive player on the slate. He's projecting for, 30+% ownership, which isn't a lot on a 3-game slate with the lack of running back options that we have. He's going to be the lowest owned running back out of Swift, Ingram if he plays, DeMont, Josh Jacobs, and Kamara if Kamara somehow plays. But it's a good spot for him, and I think he is the contrarian, pay up to be contrarian spot. So I actually like Zeke this week. But I think I would rather just take a shot on Tony Pollard and large field stuff at 5,600 at 15% ownership this week.
Oh yeah, I like Tony Pollard quite a bit. You just think about some of the injuries that the Cowboys have to their skill position players, and Tony Pollard's shown the ability to get used as a pass catcher. So if his target shares up a little bit and he is a, leverage play off of some of the other options in Dallas's passing attack, like Gallup, Dalton Schultz, potentially CeeDee Lamb, especially Ezekiel Elliott, then Pollard I like a lot in larger tournaments at 5,600. But right above him is my favorite play on this slate at running back position. It's Josh Jacobs, who is coming off of a career high 7 target game. I've disparaged Josh Jacobs at many points throughout his career. As a player that I had no interest in fantasy football, I just thought that he was kind of a two down grinder, very touchdown dependent. But it seems like his role has very much shifted this year. He's had multiple games with 5+ targets, like I said, a career high 7 last week, and it's strange because despite getting utilized in the passing game, he has yet to put up a game with 20+ points on DraftKings. If you scroll through his game log, it's all in the teens.
Yep.
But Josh Jacobs is a player that we've seen have a ceiling. We know that a ceiling game is in his range of outcomes, and I think he's game script independent at this point. If Vegas gets down, he's going to, soak up some catches. And if they get up, he could smash and get a couple of touchdowns against Dallas. And I think that that's realistic. We've seen over the last 3 weeks in 2 of the games, Dallas's offense has completely failed against Denver and against the Chiefs last week. So, yeah, I don't think it's out of the range of possibilities that Josh Jacobs, is salting this game away with a Vegas lead towards the end of things. And, if he scores a touchdown or 2, he's definitely going to be in the winning lineup. And he's leverage off of Darren Waller, who's going to be mega chalk at tight end. He's leverage off of all these running backs that are going to be higher owned than him. I think that he just sets up perfectly as a contrarian GPP play.
Yeah, I like Josh Jacobs this week, and he's going to have ownership for sure, right? He's 5,900, and like I said, there's just no running backs on this slate, right? So really, he is going to be a top 4 player in terms of ownership at the running back position. But I think the most important note is that coming out of the Raiders bye, his role in the receiving game has changed, I think, a little bit. He's being more involved than he was earlier in the season at the expense of Kenyan Drake. As you could see here 16 targets over the last 3 Raiders games, 5 catches, 4 catches in each. So if Josh Jacobs has this receiving role now, or the majority of it, he is a way better play than before the Raiders bye. And at 5,900, the floor, I think, is pretty high. Only 1 game with under 10 points. I think the ceiling is kind of low in this spot. Like, I don't think he's going to run for 100+ and 2 touchdowns against the Cowboys on the road. But if he gets you 16 to 18 points, you'll take it at 5,900. And you could fade Josh Jacobs, or you could fade David Montgomery and roll Josh Jacobs in a lineup as well. And, hopefully David Montgomery busts.
Yeah, I mean, Jacobs does have highest scoring running back on the slate potential, I think. Just need things to break right for him. In the first 5 games of the season, he only played 5 games before the Raiders week 8 bye, and he had 5 touchdowns in those games. And then he hasn't scored a touchdown since, but the receiving role has been there. We just need those 2 things to come together, the touchdowns and the receiving role. So this could be a spot where that happens, and Josh Jacobs smashes. So, I mean, those are the top guys, obviously, but, in terms of getting off the wall, any interest in, say maybe some of the Bills guys. We have 3 different Bills running backs. There's a lot of buzz around Matt Breida. His role has been growing. There's been some coach speak with getting him more involved. He played 32% of snaps last week, which was more than Zach Moss, and he looks explosive out there. It's not a good matchup, and, we can pretty confidently assume that all these guys are going to be mixed in. It's just a matter of, making uncomfortable plays like that, on a Thanksgiving slate. This would never be in play on a main slate, but everything is in play on a 3-game slate.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, 4,800 for Matt Breida, 4,900 for Devin Singletary. Like, if we're just comparing those guys to the wide receivers in the same range, like, I'm rather take a shot on the wide receivers 100%. So I probably won't have much of the Bills running backs just because they are priced up a little bit and they all siphon work off of each other. And it's really just a crapshoot. So I'd just avoid it as a whole. I think if I'm looking down at the bottom of this player pool, I mean, we mentioned Tony Pollard, but he's 5,600. Kind of a large field only play. Tony Pollard is like a milli maker play. Just because Zeke does have, the RB1 role in that Cowboys offense. Kenyan Drake is interesting. we talked about Josh Jacobs having the passing game role, and it's been kind of sticky in the last 3 games, and maybe that's his role moving forward. But on a short game slate like this, maybe that role isn't as sticky as we're assuming, and Kenyan Drake goes back in to his role as the primary Raiders running back out of the backfield in terms of receiving, and he gets, a 6 for 70 game, right? Or
Right.
he scores 14 to 15 points at 4,600. I'll take that out of Kenyan Drake. And then I think Tony Jones is going to get a decent amount of ownership, especially if Ingram and Kamara are out this week. And honestly, it looks like both of them are going to miss, which is going to be truly unfortunate because I don't want to play Tony Jones, but he is a salary saver, 4K. He showed a little bit of burst earlier in the season before his ankle injury, as you could see here, 11 for 50 against Green Bay. And I think he could play well in the receiving game too. So he's going to become a little chalky if those top guys miss.
Yeah. Also, depending on when we get the news, if Ingram and or Kamara are game time decisions, and we don't know until the end, I think that Jones will probably fly under the radar. But that's something we'll have to.
I don't think he'll fly under the radar. Everybody's going to be home,
right,
on their phones.
Yeah, but
watching football.
But right, so I mean, what time is that game? It's at like 8:20.
8.
So I mean, by 7:00, people are drunk, people are passed out. They're full. They're probably not late swapping as much as they should be.
Good point.
I mean, I think that those are all of the viable running back plays. I mean, Jamaal Williams is a pivot in the Detroit game, maybe, but I don't really love that, to be honest. I don't see the ceiling.
I mean, he is 4K.
Price. Yeah, I mean, he's min price. He could be, he could outproduce Tony Jones, but it's just like, for what?
I mean, as you could see right here, early in the season, they showed a willingness to use Jamaal Williams, and if he takes a touchdown away from DeAndre Swift, which is definitely in the range of outcomes, at 4K, he looks like one of the better leverage plays on the slate, especially if Tony Jones becomes popular, which I personally think he will. I think we'll know today or tonight if Kamara and Ingram will be ready to go. And, if they're out and Tony Jones becomes popular at 4K and DeAndre Swift is going to be one of the highest owned running backs on the slate, Jamaal Williams at the running back position becomes probably the best leverage play at the position, in my opinion. He's leverage off of Tony Jones. He's leverage off of DeAndre Swift. And you'll get, in my opinion, 8 to 12 touches out of Jamaal Williams. It's just all about, will he score a touchdown? Will he take a touchdown away from DeAndre Swift? And obviously the touchdown expectation is very low with the Lions to begin with. But if that scenario works out in Jamaal Williams' favor, he's going to be the best leverage play at the position. So I kind of like him this week.
I agree from a theory standpoint, but as we transition here to wide receiver, you'll notice that, it's really hard to find players to pay up for this week. You know what I mean? We have one player at the wide receiver position above 7K, and it's Stephon Diggs, who's going to be massively owned. Then after that, we've got CeeDee Lamb at 6,900, who looks like he's going to play. And after that, everybody's below 6K. Like, there's nowhere to spend your salary at the wide receiver position this week.
Yeah, but see, this is what I say. Everybody is going to look to pay the full salary, like, because there's a psychological effect, or there's just like psychology in your brain that says, like, I got to use the whole 50K salary. Right. But that's a way to get unique on a slate like this, where the best plays are pretty obvious and the most chalky guys are pretty obvious. You leave salary on the table, right? That's a way to get unique on a 3-game slate, on a 2-game slate, which we'll have coming up in the next couple of weeks. So something to think about. You gotta find ways to get unique, and one of the best ways to get unique is to not use the full 50K salary.
Yeah. How much would you feel comfortable leaving on the table?
I don't know, probably 1,000, 2,000 max.
So you're not leaving like 10K on the board.
Well, no,
Talking like a 40K lineup.
if you're leaving 10K on the board, you're just sacrificing too much in terms of projection.
Right.
But
so
if you're
1 to 2K is all right though.
yeah, you're sacrificing a little bit to be contrarian and unique, and could definitely work out in your favor. I mean, on short slates before, there's a prime example. A guy in the DFS space, I don't know his username, I forgot, but he won the millie on one of the short game slates with like the Chiefs and Bills. It was like last season. He won it, and it was use your whole 50K, but instead of playing Tyreek Hill and using the whole salary, he paid down to McCole Hardman and won the millie. So that's like just a clear-cut example of, how leaving salary on the table and forcing yourself into a unique construction can pay off for you if things break your way.
Yeah. So, you're up ahead and you got Steph Diggs. You just play Gabe Davis and sail to the money is basically what I just heard you say. Bree versus Alex says, is it a 3 running back week or a 4 wide receiver week? In cash, it's definitely a 4 running back week. In tournaments, you can do whatever you want. I think that there's no clear lean. I think you definitely, I'll probably have exposure to both, and I'll also have exposure to 2 tight ends. I think that, as we'll get to tight ends shortly, tight ends are always viable on short slates like this. All you need is a couple of touchdowns, and they'll probably outperform the other players at their position from a pricing standpoint.
Well, you said 4 running back week. So is it a 3 running back or 4 wide receiver week?
3 running back or 4 wide receiver week. In cash, it's a 3 running back week.
Okay, you said 4 running back.
Oh, yeah.
So just had to clarify that.
Yeah.
But yeah. So just in terms of wide receivers, we already touched on the top. Diggs, 7,900 is the spend-up option. CeeDee Lamb, it does look like he's going to play, right?
It does.
I don't know. I think
he plays.
It's a quick turnaround, but we've seen players get cleared from concussion protocol pretty quickly this season. And if it wasn't a bad concussion, I think he should be ready to go in this spot. And I think as the clear-cut Cowboys wide receiver 1, it'd be a great spot for CeeDee Lamb. That's definitely something to monitor. I think we'll get that news as well by the end of today. I'm assuming that a lot of this news is going to come out by the end of tonight, hopefully. So we'll have that information later. But if not, if he can't go, Michael Gallup, 5,900. He's gonna be massive chalk once again, I think. Then you got, the wide receiver is ugly. You got these cheap Bills wide receivers, I think, will come with some ownership, and I think they are pretty solid plays. But other than that, it's pretty grim at the wide receiver position.
Yeah, so like the chalk this week is going to be Diggs and Gallup, I think.
Yep.
Darnell, Mooney as well. And then there will be some ownership on like Cedric Wilson makes sense as a punt with the Dallas injuries. He's only 3,500. He saw like 7 targets last week. So those will probably be the most popular plays on the slate. And then like secondary chalk will probably include like Cole Beasley, maybe Manny Sanders, maybe Hunter Renfrow. But I don't know. Who do you think is a good fade, out of these highly owned wide receivers?
I think it has to be Diggs.
Really?
I think he is the most expensive. I think, honestly, it's a tough fade, right? I can't really make excuses for fading Diggs besides the ownership leverage. You save salary by fading him, and obviously you have the potential Marshawn Lattimore, lockdown treatment on Diggs this week, but not really too scared of that. He's a great play. If I'm playing 3 lineups, I play Diggs in 2 of them. You know, if I'm playing 10, I play Diggs in 8 or 7 of those lineups. So I'm not fading him completely and probably be overweight the field in terms of ownership. But I think you could just pivot down to the other Bills wide receivers. I love Josh Allen doubles with 2 of the cheap receivers. Sanders, Cole Beasley, Gabe Davis is, where is he? He's 3,600. He's cheap, and it's kind of another situation, you know, that comes into play with what I just said, just leaving salary on the table, and that's one way to get different. And Cole Beasley, 4,500.
Talk about it.
This dude, I mean, if you guys don't know, this man is the short slate god.
Yeah.
There's just no denying it. Thanksgiving Day a couple years ago when he was with the Cowboys, he went off. Couple slates last year where the Bills had those like COVID impacted games on those 2 game slates, went off. So Cole Beasley on a short slate, 4,500, stone lock, in my opinion.
Yeah, he is a stone cold lock, and he's projecting right now for about 30% ownership. I'm gonna be way over on that.
Yeah, I
way
mean,
over on that.
there's really no basis behind us saying that besides he's a short slate god. So
What other basis do you need?
but the other wide receivers in this range, I think Darnell Mooney is a fantastic play. 5,700. It looks like A-Rob is going to miss this game, and Darnell Mooney is going to play. So he is the Bears wide receiver 1, and we saw last week 16 targets, just an insane amount of targets, and he's in a great spot, obviously, against the Detroit defense. He's going to come with one of the highest ownerships at wide receiver, and he's projecting to be one of the better values on the slate. And then, obviously, you got the cheap Cowboys wide receivers as well. I don't know if you like them, you know, a lot. Cedric Wilson is 3,500, and Noah Brown, I think, is 3K. Yeah, 3K. So, I don't know. Do you prefer, you know, Cedric Wilson to some of these cheap Bills wide receivers, or, you know, who's your favorite punt?
I think it's hard to play. Okay, so let me say it like this. I would only play Cedric Wilson in DAC stacks because he's going to be so chalky that I want to get away from him where I can. If I'm playing a Josh Allen stack, I would rather play Gabe Davis or like try and bring it back with like Deonthe Harris on the other side from the Saints or something like that. Even Deshaun Jackson is interesting. He's, you know, 100 above the min price in that Dallas game. He's seen an uptick in routes. I mean, he's done absolutely nothing since going to the Raiders, but he might catch a deep target or two, and that's all you need at 3,100. Josh Reynolds, who has chemistry with Jared Goff from the LA days at min price, is interesting as like a very low owned to bring back to, or at least a correlated piece for your Bears stuff. So yeah, I don't know. I think it's hard to play Cedric Wilson at massive chalk, especially if CD comes in. So
yeah, could definitely see Josh Reynolds, you know, being a fine GPP play. The min price, as you could see here in the DraftKings analysis, he played 41 of 46 snaps last week. Basically, he's the wide receiver 1 now in Detroit after getting signed off the street.
Yeah.
And then you obviously noted the connection between him and Jared Goff. There's some established chemistry there. So I definitely like playing Josh Reynolds just as a dart throw in GPPs tomorrow. Cedric Wilson, I think, is fine. And other than that, I mean, who's your favorite tournament play at wide receiver this week? Like, who's your guy for tomorrow?
I mean, it's got to be Gabe. All right, this is my time. This is my time to play Gabriel Davis. It's so razor thin on regular slates when I try to get this off. But I mean, he's got a 100-yard game in the last 2 weeks. He's seen an uptick in snaps. Emmanuel Sanders has been playing less. Emmanuel Sanders is old as dirt. Gabriel Davis is the young man. I've been touting him since like April. And this is the spot where I have to play him. You know, I have to. They're going to be running a lot of man coverage. That's the whole Saints defense. So, you know, I think Gabe will probably get a couple opportunities one-on-one Josh Allen airs it out, he catches one and you're good. You know, if he gets like that 16.5 points that he got in week 10, you know, he's probably the best play under 4K. So I like Gabriel Davis as a contrarian play. He's also going to be the least owned Bills wide receiver. So yeah, I'm all about that Gabe Davis this week. He's my guy. You're muted, bro.
I definitely love the Bills wide receivers this week for sure. And the Saints have kind of been a funnel to wide receiver twos, wide receiver threes, etc. You know, everybody that Marshawn Lattimore is not on has scored points. So I definitely like targeting the cheap Bills wide receivers with Josh Allen. I think that's definitely a way to get unique, especially with Stephon Diggs. He's probably going to be decently owned. I would assume probably a top 2 in terms of ownership, him and Gallup. So definitely like that. And on slates like this, you could just onslaught teams.
Yeah.
You could do triple stacks of Josh Allen, right? With Gabe, Dawson Knox, Steph Diggs, whomever. I think that's totally fine on these short slates that we're going to have upcoming in the recent week or in the future weeks. So
I think it's more than okay. I think it's like optimal, you know, for tournament
it's probably
play.
optimal
Because like you think about it, like I think it's, you know, going back to your point about like the psychology behind building lineups. Like a lot of the times I think people don't want to play that many players from one game because, you know, the way that your brain is wired is like, well, they can't all hit their ceiling in a tournament. But
that's true for like if you're playing the Millie.
Correct.
Like, don't onslaught, but small field.
But if you know one of these games fails or two of these games fails, it probably will be an onslaught that gets there. You know, because if one of these games hits far above the others, then you're in a great spot if you onslaught that game. I also don't think the Bills onslaught is going to be as popular just because, you know, the total is only 45.5. It's dropped massively compared to the 51 total of the Dallas game. And there's more value, I think, in the Dallas game with some of the cheap guys we've mentioned. So I don't know. I think a lot of people are going to onslaught that game. And I kind of like the Bills stuff that you mentioned, you know, maybe just like fade Diggs and you're super contrarian right off the bat and you play like Allen, Beasley, Knox, you know, something like that. Gabe Davis, if you want to make it a full blown, you know, triple stack. But who's your Saints bring back? That's the question that we need answered.
None. None.
Not even Treyway? Like this is like a definitive DFS dose slate. Like some of the guys that we've been touting for years. Treyway's on this slate, Beasley's on this slate, Gabe is on this slate. Like this is a slate for us.
Yeah, I mean, Houston in the chat mentioned it. Probably Deonthe Harris if I'm playing large field stuff just for the ceiling. He is kind of like the big play threat in the Saints offense. But honestly, the Saints, I think, just want to run a low pass volume offense, feed the running backs is kind of the way that I feel like they want to play right now, especially with Trevor Siemian as the starter. And, you know, the Bills do have a tough defense, best defense in the NFL from a fantasy perspective. And I just really have no interest in these Saints guys. I mean, all of these guys are just scrubs. You know, Marquez Callaway, scrub. Traquan Smith, scrub. Deonthe Harris, scrub. We're not going to have Kamara. We're not going to have Ingram, most likely. Although I would say Ingram is more likely to play than Kamara. But if we don't have those guys and, you know, you get Tony Jones at 4K, I mean, I guess I would just play Tony Jones for the savings.
Any Juwan Johnson, 2,600 tight end?
Yeah, I mean, tight end for sure. It's either him or Tony Jones as my preferred bring back in Bill stacks. But other than that, at wide receiver, I don't know. Do you have any interest in the Raiders guys? We haven't really mentioned Renfro or Bryan Edwards.
God, like, no, not really. I mean, Bryan Edwards is just ass. Like,
yeah,
I don't want to play him. I mean, I guess Renfro is just so unexciting. You know, he's a guy who's probably going to get you like 12, 13 points. He doesn't have a game with over 20 this season. So it's like, I don't know. Like he's 5,600. I would rather just play Tony Pollard for 5,600.
Fair point. I mean, I really have no interest in the Raiders wide receivers, especially in, a tougher matchup on the road. It's a short week for, majority of these teams, and they're all coming off losses.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't really have any interest in the Raiders besides the running backs and Darren Waller, to be honest.
I will say Marquise Goodwin, I think, is an interesting bit of leverage off of Darnell Mooney and David Montgomery for the Bears. We saw him have a monster catch last week, a 49-yard touchdown, 8 targets, so he is getting involved a little bit more. I think he's interesting at 3,800 just for the leverage and the fact that the Lions have given up, I want to say the most, or at least their top 5 in deep passing attempts allowed of 20 yards or more down the field, which is what Marquise Goodwin does. So I think he's just slightly interesting as a pivot and a leverage play off of Mooney specifically, and a little bit David Montgomery.
Yep. I like Goodwin as a long shot GPP play this weekend. The worst team in terms of DraftKings points allowed to opposing wide receivers on this slate is the Chicago Bears. So if you want, you could kind of get crazy, play Khalif Raymond. We mentioned Josh Reynolds. I think are both fine plays this week, especially if you project the Lions to be losing in this spot, which I think a lot of people will. So I definitely like the Lions pass catchers just as cheap one-offs, and they're not going to be owned.
Yeah, man. And shout out to the scrub who played Khalif Raymond against me in cash last week.
Yeah.
One of the few lineups I won, like 6 out of 100 cash games I won. One of them had Khalif Raymond coming at me. So shout out to him. At the tight end position, Darren Waller should be the most utilized player by the field. He's only 6,400, and as we've mentioned, there is plenty of options to save salary. Waller went over 100 yards for the first time since week 1 in last week's game against Cincinnati. I think he's, clear-cut got the highest ceiling at the position, and he's very easy to fit with all the value. So, I mean, how do you feel about Darren Waller in tournaments? Are you going to be, in line with the field, overweight, underweight?
I mean, is that even a question?
It's going to be underweight, right?
I'm going to be hella underweight.
Full fade?
Almost. 6,400 as the highest owned tight end on the slate. I mean, yeah, it's Darren Waller. Like, he's great. But we've talked about it the entire season. What does he have to score to really burn you? Maybe it's a little bit lighter on a slate like this with the lack of tight end options, not a main slate.
Well, scoring in general will be lower,
Yeah.
So,
but realistically, like 20 plus for him to kill you on a slate like this.
Yeah,
like, I'm not gonna go full fade, but I'm definitely gonna be underweight his projection as the highest owned tight end for sure.
Mm-hmm. I think I would only play him as like a contrarian Derek Carr stack, because he's going to be so highly owned that, like, if he's not a correlated piece, I mean, I guess everything is kind of correlated in a 3-game slate for the most part, but it's just hard to eat that much chalk at the tight end position for a high price guy like that. So I would definitely be looking to make sure it's in a contrarian lineups in some way. And I think Derek Carr stacks make sense, because if he's hitting his salary, if he's paying off his salary, Derek Carr is probably doing all right. But I mean, the mid-range is really good, I think, this week. Like, Dalton Schultz is interesting. The Raiders have gotten obliterated by tight ends all year long. Schultz should have an increased target share. We saw it last week. He had 8 targets, after Lamb went out with no Amari Cooper. Even with Lamb in, I think Schultz is a good play. He's had big games at points this year, and it's a good matchup. TJ Hawkinson, Dawson Knox, obviously a good piece with Bill stacks. And then, we have Cole Kmet just sort of sitting there at 3,700. Huge disappointment last week is massive chalk. I don't know how quickly people are going to want to go back to him. What are we thinking for Cole Kmet this week?
I think he is fine. He's 3,700. I think the Bears pass catchers are better with Andy Dalton, just for, the threat of Andy Dalton, he's not going to run, right? So, and Justin Fields, there's obviously the threat that he does run, which obviously takes away passing attempts from the Bears pass catchers. So 3,700, it's fine. There's just really no options that I really like on this slate at tight end. So I'm probably gonna have exposure to all these guys: Waller, Dalton Schultz, TJ Hawkinson, Juwan Johnson. You mentioned he's 2,600. Definitely going to play quite a bit of him. But yeah, Cole Kmet, I think he's fine. I mean, it's really like if you're paying down at tight end on this slate, you need a touchdown. So who has the best opportunity to score a touchdown out of these cheap tight ends? I think it's Dawson Knox.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's Dawson. I mean, Dawson Knox might have the best chance to score at the tight end position in general.
And he's going to be
I mean,
lower
Waller even only has 2 touchdowns on the season. Like Dawson Knox has 5, and he missed a handful of games. Like I think that Knox is your best bet at the position to score a touchdown. He's also projecting as like the 5th highest owned out of all these guys.
Yep.
Like they're all going to be higher owned. He's a low owned correlated piece with Josh Allen. Knox to me definitely is without question the best tight end play on the slate.
I'm right there with you. Dawson Knox is the best GPP play at tight end on this Thanksgiving slate, period. 100%. Salary, leverage, ownership included. He's the best play. Dalton Schultz, I think, is fine. I think the upside is I think it's there, 26-point game, 17-point game, and he's $1,100 cheaper than Darren Waller. So you're saving a little bit. But he is going to be the 2nd highest owned tight end, in my opinion. So you're not really getting much of an ownership discount with Schultz going off, Waller to Schultz. So don't mind him. And tight end is what it is, It's a correlated piece in your lineups. I'm really only going to play the tight ends that pair with my quarterbacks or are bringbacks in the stacks that I have.
Yep.
Like I'm just not going to play. Let's say I'm not going to play a TJ Hawkinson one-off if I don't have, like a bear stack or if I don't have Jared Goff in that lineup is pretty much how I'm approaching it.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. And then I guess we can close out here with the defense. Bears are probably going to be the highest owned, which would make me want to fade them. It's just going to be an ownership thing for me this week. Like, I think that obviously it's defense. Like, you could play whoever you want, play who fits. I'm kind of interested in the Lions. Like, I think they're cheap. They're 2,400. They're the direct, leverage off the Bears defense.
Oops.
And I mean, ultimately, this is Andy Dalton going on the road. Like, I know that, we're all expecting the Bears to run in this spot, but like, Andy Dalton on the road could easily be a disaster. So I like the Lions at 2,400 under the radar.
Yeah. Obviously it's defense and you're really just going to play what fits most of the time. But on a slate like this, where salary really isn't an obstacle, we have all of the salary to use. The Cowboys defense at home is projecting to be the lowest owned defense on the entire slate. And they're only 3,300. So it's not like they're 4K, 4,500. They're 3,300. It's obviously more expensive than the rest of the defense, as you can see. But it's nothing crazy, especially with salary not being a limitation. The Cowboys defense, and I usually never say this, the Cowboys defense is the best defensive GPP play on the board this week. Period. Like, you're getting a defense that has been good all year that can rush the passer with Parsons. It looks like they're getting DeMarcus Lawrence and Randy Gregory back soon. I don't know if they'll be ready to go in this spot against the Raiders, but if they play, you'll have, 2 of their best pass rushers back, and then you'll have the defensive rookie of the year alongside them, and then you have a ball hawking secondary with the Cowboys going up against Derek Carr. and they're going to be the lowest owned defense on the slate. Excuse me?
Right. Yeah, no, that's a really good point. And they're only $300 more than the Stone
Like,
Chalket defense.
yeah, like it doesn't make sense how this ownership is projecting out. The Cowboys are clear cut the play at defense this week, 100%. Like I will go 100% Cowboys DST. I'm telling everybody that right now, and I don't think it's close, honestly.
Wow. All right. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a good point. I didn't really think about it like that, and makes a lot of sense. So I like that quite a bit. Dallas defense 3,300.
Yeah,
Got a defense take from us.
Yeah, just it doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense on a short slate. All these defenses should be on, but if they come in at their projected ownership of around 7 to 8%, which is way lower than defenses like the Bears, the Lions, like what are we doing here? Like play the actual good defenses on the slate, which is the Cowboys, Bills.
Right. Are the Bills going to be lower owned too?
The Bills are projected to be the second highest owned defense.
Okay.
To the Bears. So I guess the leverage defenses are the Saints and the Cowboys. And the Saints obviously do have a pretty good defense.
Yeah.
But Cowboys at DST, I mean, it doesn't get like if you are a GPP player, it doesn't get much easier than playing the Cowboys defense this week.
Well, we can close the show out here with Brady's request here. Build the perfect lineup. I'm down for that.
Off rip.
Yep. Cowboys D.
This is a large field GPP lineup. Try and bank the Millie. Perfect lineup.
Dawson Knox at tight end.
Definitely Cowboys D. Dawson Knox for sure.
And I mean, you might as well throw Cole Beasley in there too. It is a short slate after all.
Well, then it's looking like we pay up because we got 2 Bills pass catchers already, and we could make this a triple stack. So I don't know. We could. I mean, salary is not a problem, so we could go Diggs. We could go with Sanders. It is a revenge game. We didn't really talk about Sanders much.
Right.
We could go with a Bills running back if we want exposure to that. And I will note, I think an article or a report just came out that Zach Moss might be a healthy scratch tomorrow.
There was some rumors about them making one of the Bills running backs inactive. They hadn't said who yet. Is it going to be Zach Moss?
I think it's going to be Zach Moss. So you get Singletary and Matt Breida. I mean, taking a running back out of the equation definitely boosts the other running backs, obviously. And Singletary is the pass catcher. I don't know who would go there in this lineup. I think there's some better spots, but that's something to know that we didn't know before.
Yeah. So do you want to go with, Deontay Harris here or just fade the bring back totally?
I think we fade the bring back.
All right. So
because the bring back, I think, would be Juwan Johnson.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Running back.
Darrell Henderson.
Yes, Darrell Henderson.
As the start there. Running back. Well, are we locking in Diggs? We're doing a triple, I think. We got to do a triple.
Yeah, I think we lock in Diggs. And because I think that in a lineup where you have like Diggs, you probably don't play Gallup because that's just too much ownership.
All right. Running back. I'm fine eating David Montgomery chalk because I do think he is the best play on the slate at any position.
I agree.
Now the question is, do we correlate Montgomery with a cheap wide receiver on the Lions?
We could. I mean, or you could correlate him with Swift, who's
the Montgomery Swift correlation is going to be massively duped. Right. So we're trying to get leverage on the field, and we already have the highest owned quarterback, the highest owned running back, and the second highest owned receiver.
So we need to get different. I mean, do you just stone punt it off with Reynolds then?
I'm like in large field. I mean, I don't have a lean. I mean, you're the resident Lions fan. You should have some insight on these Lions pass catchers.
I
I
have no
think.
insight.
Hold on. Let me fix this because we're probably going for wide receiver. I would assume, just with the lack of value that we have, or with the lack of running backs that we have. So we go with Diggs in the flex because they're the late game, and then we could obviously pivot off that. I think a cheap receiver for the Lions is like that. That opens up the lineup.
Yeah. But then what do you do? Like, do you play like Zeke, or do you play like one of Pollard or Jacobs there?
I mean, you have the Zeke Cowboys D correlation,
Right. So
and
if you play
that's
Zeke, what does that leave us?
so. Let's check Zeke's ownership. So Zeke is projecting to be lower owned than Demont, Swift, Ingram, and Josh Jacobs, but he's projecting pretty poorly. So I think we could go Zeke or Pollard.
So if we go Zeke, what does that leave us with?
If we go Zeke, that leaves us with 5,100 for a wide receiver. Or we could do some switching around and maybe get like TJ Hawkinson in there. But then I don't know. I don't really like double tight end in large field stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think this lineup is okay. You know, you could just play Marquez Callaway there as a bring back if you want. I mean, he's kind of dust, so I don't love that. You could also, I mean, what happens if we play Pollard? That kind of gives us like the entire field, right? Like,
let's see.
Yeah. I mean, so like CeeDee Lamb.
And that will leave you 600.
I kind of like that lineup. I'm not even going to hold you. Does that have the upside to win a tournament? I think it might.
Yeah, I mean, you got the triple stack, you got correlation all throughout. I think it's a solid lineup. I mean, who are we really fading that will kill us?
I mean, we're fading
Swift
Swift, and we're fading like Cedric Wilson, Darnell Mooney chalk,
and Gallup chalk.
But I mean,
because Gallup's gonna I think.
But CeeDee Lamb is direct leverage off of both of those Cowboys chalk pieces, and then Josh Reynolds is like our low owned punt to get off of the Swift chalk. So it makes sense.
We could go Josh Jacobs.
Yeah, definitely
over Pollard,
which I don't hate. I don't hate that either, especially because if you think about Pollard's success probably correlates negatively with a good game from the Cowboys defense, right? Because if the Cowboys are up, how much is I mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe they shift Pollard with Zeke dealing with an injury and just run Pollard a little bit more if they're up. So I think both of those are fine, but I think that's a good core for sure. Play Jacobs, play Pollard, whoever you like in that spot.
Yeah. Jacob,
I'm going to have lineups very similar to this.
Yeah, I think this is definitely how you should be building your lineups tomorrow or tonight. Just, onslaughting one team, whether it's the Bills or the Cowboys, I think are the best onslaughts on this slate. And then just correlating your lineup throughout. Like I said, salary, not a problem this week. You can do whatever you want.
You can.
And I definitely think Josh Reynolds is the punt at wide receiver for sure. Definitely love Josh Reynolds this week. And I think this is a pretty well thought out, constructed lineup. So,
yep, guys, feel free to use that one. That's on us.
Nah, don't dupe us.
Right. I mean, I think that is going to be it, though, for this stream. We pretty much talked about every possible player that is in play, talked about some guys who aren't in play, just talked about the slate from every single angle. If you guys are watching this on replay, drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and fear not, just because we're doing this stream on Wednesday doesn't mean it's going to be our only stream this week. We will, of course, be back on Saturday night, late night live stream to go over the full week 12 main slate. So looking forward to that. And we'll talk to you guys on Saturday night. Hope everybody has a great Thanksgiving.